Today's episode is brought to you by the Vegas Beer Guys and the Sounds in Cinema podcast.
Everything sequel contains explicit language. And why the fudge not, you melon farmer?
When last we left our intrepid hosts, Tom bamboozled Mike with Tatooine slang, while Mike shared his affection for a low-stakes regional fringe sporting event upon which the fate of slaves is decided. Taxation!
Hello and welcome to the Everything Sequel podcast. This, of course, is the Phantom Menace edition. Michael Shantz here of the How Dare You Awards. The man you just heard killing it, Tom Stewart of Lonesome Whistle Productions. What else do you have for him, Tom?
My maker! Of all the things that C-3PO could call Anakin, they have to pick the one thing that complicates everything we know.
I know. Except he's been saying that since the original series. I mean, he gets his oil bath in Star Wars. And
that's what I mean. He says that thank the maker, but now the maker is
him,
Darth
right.
Vader.
Yeah,
who he's running away from.
That's why that choice is stupid.
Yes.
It's been a theme for me.
Yeah, there is a lot of stupid choices in this film.
We're back, by the way.
Yes, we are.
Thanks for taking a break, everybody. Whenever we talk Star Wars, we talk for a long time, as we feel is necessary.
It's a compulsion.
Yeah,
yeah, it really is.
So, we break these episodes up for you. You're welcome.
Otherwise, it would be like the 5-hour cut of Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah, exactly. All right, we're back. Now, were we at the pod race or right before the pod race?
Right before,
because there's one thing I didn't talk about that I do want to bring up.
Oh, dear God, we're never going to get out of here. Go on.
Well, when he's first working on his pod...
Yeah.
And everybody's kind of all around, and it's when Jar Jar, is fucking around with his wrenches, and he's dropping shit in the sand, and then he numbs his tongue and lips.
Yep. Prime fucking around.
I can still remember to this day seeing a commercial for the Phantom Menace, maybe 2 or 3 days before the movie came out, and that's the part where I saw... where I said to myself, uh-oh, I don't think I trust this movie anymore.
but I mean, potentially, you could still suspend disbelief that was just a throwaway comic moment.
I suppose,
and that he was a completely incidental character.
Yeah, but it's, when you get a feeling, I remember seeing that moment and thinking to myself, this is what George Lucas is going to lean into. And
interesting.
I don't like it.
I mean, I think historically you could see it coming via the Ewoks. And, if you were paying attention to what Lucasfilm were doing in the interim with young Indiana Jones and the like, you'll see the seeds of the prequels there. And young Indiana Jones was also Rick McCallum.
That's a totally, a perfectly good, it's a cogent argument.
Yeah.
And yet, I don't know, for some reason, even as an adult, I see a fundamental difference between Ewoks and Jar Jar.
Oh, there is. There is a fundamental difference, but...
I mean beyond they're real and he's
direction.
Not. Which I think helps the Ewoks a great deal.
No, I think there's huge differences, but it definitely opened the floodgates, I think.
Yeah, okay.
Also Jabba's palace, I mean, there's a similar, if you whole sequences sustained by Muppets, there's
Yeah, but you could say that about the bar scene in the first one, and that one plays like a bar scene. It
wasn't 30 minutes. It wasn't 30 minutes long, and mostly non-human interaction.
That's true. But I also think there's a difference between the original Jedi and the reissue. Because I think what you're talking about feels worse in the reissue.
But that had already happened, right? The special editions, I should say, that is that's what you should be paying attention to if you wanted to know how the prequels were gonna
right
come to fruition.
That's where he's announcing his presence.
Absolutely.
This is what I think of Star Wars right now.
And as you said in the previous episode, this is restrained compared to the special edition.
Right.
So it's almost like he pulled back from...
Which does seem crazy when you think about it. I mean, I think you said in our last episode, that it does seem that George Lucas listened, which in and of itself feels like a miracle, right? Because he's not listening to anything from anyone about anything.
He listens, but he also, he listens, he implements whilst also biting back simultaneously. Again, when we get into Attack of the Clones, I have a lot to say about that. And it can be an intoxicating mixture of do-over and double down.
Yeah, right.
but I think I said before on this very podcast that I think on last year's Star Wars episodes that the special edition, I think, is the peak of George Lucas's crimes against art.
Mm-hmm.
And the prequels, to me, comes nowhere near the same culpability.
I'm going to have to agree with you.
Yeah.
I'd never given that much thought, but you're absolutely right, I think.
I think it's far more egregious, the hatchet job he did on those movies versus, imperfect. And a trilogy that is imperfect doesn't necessarily work.
Mm-hmm.
But is nonetheless coherent in and of itself.
Right. All right. Where exactly were we? I seem to remember having a lengthy discussion about midichlorians.
Yes, we just done that. We talked about the political cartoon going on in the background.
Yes.
Of one of the shots.
Oh, you know what else? Sorry,
God.
I'm so sorry.
Star Wars
Interrupt
Episode 1, Part 1.5.
But it speaks to my Jar Jar comment earlier, because there was one thing that I don't think I've ever picked up on before, and it's C-3PO at one point says, "I find that Jar Jar creature very odd." And I just made a note that he's saying out loud what the audience must have been thinking all along.
And in that moment, you realize that we're building this repertoire of sidekicks.
Mm-hmm.
We've got Jar Jar, now we've got both of the droids, then a bunch of kids appear. It's like a Justice League's worth of sidekicks.
Right, yeah. There's a lot of Wonder Twins going on.
Yeah, including Warwick Davis's Wald, who we should, who will play another character in about 10 minutes.
It's so strange to me when I rewatch this movie and see him in the crowd for the pod race, filmed as though we're supposed to know who he is the feeling I get.
Right, and
it's totally nonsensical. It just throws me for a loop every time. Why he's in that part in the way that he is.
I guess from because of Willow, they're like he's somewhat of a face.
Yeah,
letting him show his face, I guess, if you know that he was Wicket, then that's metaphilmically that's a big deal. But this is, one of the rare instances where the Disney era kind of doubles down on the prequels, because he's playing the same character in Solo when he reappears.
Mm-hmm.
And yet we have the same thing there where we're like, oh, it's Warwick Davis playing another character. And then it turns out, nothing is said in the movie, but it turns out that that's the same guy who is at the pod race for some reason. So it's sort of I think Warwick Davis is both a through line and also just, a kind of cameo king at the same
Just
time.
a cameo. Yeah, he's a cameo wild card.
They want to turn him into the Bruce Campbell of this franchise.
Yeah,
I think this is what's going on.
With no dialogue, no jokes, no character, no nothing.
And often not with a face.
Right. Well, should we talk in earnest about this pod race?
Well, I've got stuff to say before the pod race, okay?
All right, all right.
I'm not
fine.
the only one who. You're not the only one who could clunk up this opening, because we've got to make the side bet, right?
Oh yeah,
The side bet that's going to free Anakin.
You're right. We haven't gotten that far.
And to say this is kind of trivializing human life is an understatement. I mean,
Sure.
if you've experienced slavery even secondhand, this scene must come across as quite cold and heartless.
Yes. I think the thing that always surprises me whenever I watch this movie is the ease with which the character of Qui-Gon has no problem with slavery. It seems it's more like a blackjack dealer who's leaving the table. It's like nothing I can do. Sorry, nothing in my powers says that I should stop slavery. It's just how the world's run in this galaxy far, far away. Nothing I can do.
Interesting. Well, he lives in the galaxy. He's not far, far away from the galaxy.
That's true.
He's a part of it and connected to the political elite, so he could have influence if he wanted to. When he says, I didn't come here to free slaves, I keep expecting him to follow it up with, I came here to chew gum and
Bubble
kick
gum
ass.
and kick ass.
What is... What does it matter, But he does. But he frees Anakin, but not his mother. And the difference between her freedom and
it's that he's
both
supposed
of their
to bring
freedoms.
balance to the Force. He's a Jedi.
Well, also, he can control how that dice moves. So presumably, he could control it so that it allowed Shmi to be freed as well. I don't know.
Well, don't they talk about that though? I think he
well,
tries,
I guess
and
it's
Watto
never said,
says
but
no go. Like, there's no way I'm getting.
But
rid
this
of
is all
two
the no
slaves.
all the no attachment stuff is in the next movie. But
Mhm.
I think looking back, you can see that Qui-Gon didn't want her around complicating things.
Yeah. And I think Lucas probably knew enough to know that he was going to kill her in the next movie, and that was going to be a catalyst for the character.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, killed it too soon, I think.
But I also don't think the one thing that never jives well with me in this moment is I don't think Watto would give up the kid. I don't think he'd put him up, even on a bet, even on chance.
Yeah, but the film
he's
has
valuable.
an explanation for that.
Which is?
He's blinded by greed.
All right. I mean,
he sees a chance to take the whole pot, and they've set this up by saying everyone's weakness here is gambling.
Mm-hmm.
It's like anything in Star Wars. If one thing happens on a planet, it applies to everyone on that planet.
Yeah, but he knows
this
enough.
This is the gambling planet.
I get that, but he also knows enough about Jedi powers to know that.
Yeah.
Someone's trying to use a Jedi mind trick on him, so why doesn't he know that?
Yeah,
that
I'm not saying those two things add up.
Okay, fine.
As I said in the previous episode, it should have been Boss Nass who resists the Jedi mind trick and Watto who succumbs to it.
All right.
Yeah, no, I there are still inconsistencies, but just a different inconsistent inconsistency.
There you go.
Which this movie is full of.
All right, are you finished now?
I think so, yeah.
Because this ends up being...
Well, you have a lot to say about the pod race.
Well, I was going to say that this ends up being my favorite part of the entire, probably first three movies.
I like how you said "ends up being" because not
Well,
only.
Hang on, I have a point to make.
Okay, but not only. I just want to say, not only are you starting with a qualifier,
Yes.
but It's an entirely correct summation of this sequence, but go on.
Yeah. I love the pod race.
Okay.
I think it's
all of it?
Well, I think it's a fantastic bit of filmmaking. Mostly.
Answer the question!
But I'll say this. The first time I saw it, and every time I've seen it since, it doesn't start well. When I see that two-headed group of two-headed sports announcers, I just constantly want to wither into a pool of my own anger because it's a baffling choice to me. They're so over the top silly.
And baffling.
I honestly, whenever I look at them, I can't believe they didn't hire John Madden. That's how ridiculous they are.
Well, you know who they did hire.
Like, they should have just made it John Madden.
They hired Greg Proops and Scott Capurro.
I know.
But this is baffling. This is even... I mean, the thing that's most baffling about it is, in a piece of science fiction, we're unable to keep the allusions to our own world stable when you have stuff like this, because it's too much a part of our world. It's too specific. That kind of spectator sport commentary is too specific to our world. It's impossible to buy into it in the world of Star Wars.
Right.
And added to that, they hired 2 comedians, both of whom are stand-up comedians, and they only let one of them speak. Scott Capurro was like overdubbed with alien nonsense, so it's just Scott Capurro's body. And in a way, not that I'm saying logic applies to any of this, but if you were gonna make one of them silent, I'd make the one known for improv silent,
right? Because
he's probably gonna have a better grasp of slapstick.
Yeah.
But no, it's Greg Proops who's doing all the heavy lifting verbally.
I mean, he is a good verbal quipster, though.
Yeah, and he had, if you ever hear the Matt Gawley's I Was There Too, where he interviews Greg Proops about doing this, he did it very, very quickly with limited information as to what was going on. So, did the best job he could.
Of course, that's how it went.
And then, straight after this, we get the roll call of all the pod racers, which is like a kind of inversion of the cantina scene, because it's all one continuous shot, or at least it looks like it is. It's difficult to tell in these movies.
Right.
And you kind of, instead of like cutting away to a new alien in a montage, essentially, which is what they do in the cantina scene, we track sideways and see each new alien as we go. It's also a little bit of an inversion of the bounty hunter scene from Empire Strikes Back.
Little.
In that you hardly see them, and you see nothing but these racers in the shot.
Yeah. But I also think it's a mixed bag, because there are some that I think look okay, and there are some where I think, whoa, what, let's take a second pass. Why do some look good and some look bad?
Yeah. Yeah, and then farting camel. Sorry, just to bring us down even further. It's not going well, is it?
No segue.
Your favorite sequence in the movie is not going great so far.
Yeah, no, this is not the strongest part of my favorite sequence.
And in a way, I would have preferred just a fart joke. But you have the OP turning around and looking Jar Jar in the eyes. So, there's needless sentience there, right? It's like...
It reminds me of a bit I saw in Colbert where it was something about, in a men's locker room. And it was like all the things you shouldn't be doing in a locker room. And basically the cartoon picture is of a naked old man with his leg up and like a dryer drying his ball sack or something like that. Except for some reason, the old man is making direct eye contact with you. That's exactly, Yeah.
That's 100%.
Needlessly.
Yeah. But, but this, again, it's hard to I was gonna say unsee, but unhear is better because
Yeah.
there's an OP in the final shot of Revenge of the Sith,
Mhm.
and every time I see that final shot, I expect it to fade out with a like I just kind of
Yeah.
said. And then, of course, when the Obi-Wan Kenobi series comes out, he's on an OP for most of the first episode. And
Yeah.
how they resisted the low-hanging fruit of not having that OP fart at least once, I don't know. Especially as he's feeding him this whale meat.
Yeah.
It could have been like Rusty in the Marble Rye episode of Seinfeld. That would have vastly improved that show for me, quite frankly. And then we get Sebulba quoting Jabba from the future
Mhm.
in one of our, call back forwards
Yeah.
that we get in prequels. And if you didn't catch that it was a Jabba quote that he was pre-quoting,
Bantha fodder.
yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's you'll see Jabba pretty soon
Yeah. Right.
in all his special edition glory.
Yeah.
Which
I
is
mean,
to
they
say,
just-
no glory
No
at all.
glory at all. They have not been able to get that right.
No.
Not once since that magnificent artwork of a puppet
Yeah.
that they used in Jedi.
And they should have just abandoned ever having Jabba on screen again because I don't think
Because that's
it's
how good he
reali-
looks in Jedi.
Right, and I think it's unrealistic to expect them to recreate that
Yeah.
that kind of set of circumstances in which that puppet was created. But knowing that you can't get that should be the reason why you never do it again.
They can't even get Bib Fortuna right. Which always surprises me whenever I see this movie. I
Yeah.
think, why can't they get that right? They can take a still photo of what the fuck he looked like in Jedi. Match this,
George-
please.
George has been, sitting in his desk ruining it for a good few years. He should remember.
Right.
But it's like, it's Return of the Jedi, essentially, isn't it?
Yeah,
We're back on
yeah.
Tatooine. Jabba, Bib Fortuna, Bantha fodder.
So I guess Jabba's...
And that's the, it's easy to forget sometimes. That's the last Star Wars film, proper.
Mhm. Yeah.
Return of the Jedi. Doesn't seem that way now, and there's so many of them,
Right.
and we can't keep track of the chronology now. There's so much Star Wars media.
It's so
but
deep.
at the time, it's a straight line from here to, from Jedi to here.
I'm not even sure it makes narrative sense. How far of a reach does Jabba
I'm
have?
certain it doesn't make narrative sense.
You know?
I don't know whether this was a playground
This
rumor
is supposed to
or
be
whether
a
it's just
different city on a different part of the planet. It's not Mos Eisley.
But this is the thing, like, I don't know if it was my headcanon or whether someone on the playground said this, but I always assumed that was Jabba's dad, and then when the other when the other Hutt comes out, it looks. I was like, I don't know why I thought this. I mean, the Hutts are pretty big anyway, but in my head, the other one was the mother and Jabba was inside her belly. I feel like someone said that to me at some point. Because that would make more sense if that Jabba was gestating in his mother's tummy at that point.
Right.
And this was like, Joe Fortuna or something, Bib's dad.
Joe Fortuna. The Fortunas have been serving the Jabbas for centuries.
That makes more. But that's something that you can buy as plausible.
But
the
it
Jabba
also lends itself towards, like, the sitcom of this entire franchise.
It's
Bib
hard to
Fortuna
believe.
working with Jabba the Hutt, and there's a misunderstanding every half-hour episode.
Yeah. Like Smithers and Mr. Burns.
Yeah, that ends up with a Jabba the Hutt karate chop.
But
I
that's
guess he does
easier
that to 3PO, but
yeah, it's easier to believe that Jabba has been in control of his territory for the past 30 years.
yeah, right.
By the time of Return of the Jedi, because if you've seen Book of Boba Fett, like basically after Jabba's gone, there's a power vacuum there, and there's about 3 different people who take the reins. So it's hard to square all of that, especially when you don't need this.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Part of this is really just a kind of greatest hits package. Every Tatooine alien is seen at some point during the pod race.
Mm-hmm.
The Jawas, the Tusken
Right.
Raiders, or whatever the politically correct term is now. I think we've gone back to Tusken Raiders.
I guess. Not allowed to call them sand people anymore.
Definitely not. Definitely not sand people. I definitely know we're not calling them sand people. It was only racist Obi-Wan who calls them that.
No, I think
And
Luke first calls them sand people.
Well, where do you think he got it from?
He hadn't even met Ben yet. Well,
No, he had, because he has.
I mean before Obi-Wan came out.
But he has anyway. He does say he's met him before.
All
in
right,
so
fine.
many words. Anyway. But they shouldn't have done what they did where he, bought him the plane and everything. The shuttle, sorry, not the plane. Anakin gets 2 seconds of training from Qui-Gon and now he's invincible. So, I don't know if it's just Skywalkers or is this how easy it is to train a Jedi?
He also it doesn't really take because he can't even start his fucking speeder because it's been sabotaged.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that, I feel like I'm going to start Halloween 2018 in this because I've announced it as my favorite part.
This is where it turns. It's front loaded with so much nonsense.
Yeah.
And then it starts to get good.
But when the race starts and every time his pod doesn't start, I think, well, he'd never catch up. There's no way.
Absolutely no way. But
once you suspend your disbelief for that,
yeah,
and once it starts in earnest, I mean, it's just visceral filmmaking.
Yeah,
that probably goes on for too long, but it's so exciting. Yeah, I mean,
it's even longer than it was on release. They added scenes to it. And the same thing strikes me every time I see it. Like this, if you look outside of the immediate context, it's so low stakes.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You have to really manufacture those stakes to make it seem important. But it's still the most exciting event in the movie so far. I like how it visually references the trench run.
Right.
I think it kind of shows that, if you're looking for a connection with the original trilogy, you don't get it in terms of storytelling or character. You get it in terms of visual symmetry, visual kind of overlap. And George Lucas has spoken about that, the famous quote or infamous quote of, "It's like poetry, it rhymes."
Mm-hmm.
That's how he saw the connection between the prequel trilogy and the original, that there are allusions to... There are indirect allusions throughout, but more on a visual level.
Well, this pod race reminds...
level.
When I watch it, it reminds me of our conversation of the speeder chase in Jedi.
Yeah.
Because I think...
And, of course, it's the same person behind it.
The
George
sound
Lucas
and all...
Ben
we talked about the sound and all of that, and that's what really strikes me when...
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting to... it does go on for too long, but it's interesting to watch them go over the same terrain more than once.
Yeah.
And the, hearing different pods as they round a certain corner, that certain corner they go around where there's a rock that they have to avoid to their right, that kind of thing. And you see it, how different racers attack that moment and that kind of, all of that's visually interesting to watch.
On an audio-visual level, this sequence is, I think, genuinely outstanding. Because, exactly what you said, the same quality as the speeder race. Once the commentary and the jokes stop and we're just watching the race, Ben Burtt's ambient soundscape starts to emerge, and it's hypnotizing.
And it makes the movie so much better.
And it makes the movie so much better. And shortly after that, we get the most suspenseful moment of the film, which is Anakin fixing a power coupling.
Right, exactly.
And again, the lowest stakes.
Right.
You could possibly imagine, but because we've kind of been drawn into it through Ben Burtt's soundscape, and because quite frankly, all CGI propellers aside, George Lucas knows how to film vehicles and film machinery.
Yeah, he does.
Knows what
he does know how to do
shots
that.
To pick,
right.
And he knows how to edit towards momentum as
Mhm.
well. I mean, you know, he's done that for other directors. The newspaper sequence in The Godfather he edited for Coppola to make
Mhm.
it more dynamic. And I think that is really, and then you get, you know, even
It's a strength of his for sure.
the choice of how they film the pod race
Yeah.
is
I was just
great.
thinking about that.
The pilot's eye view of the
Pilot's
ravine.
eye view. There are moments, kind of Hitchcockian moments up above.
Yeah.
You know.
And I remember seeing that in the trailer. I remember seeing that shot in the trailer, and
Yeah.
that's what made me excited about this film. And it's one of the few moments that actually translates into the film itself.
Exactly.
Where it's like it's as exciting in the film as it was in the trailer. And there's maybe about 2 or 3 instances of that. And this is one of them. And of course, again, like the visual language calls back to the Millennium Falcon flipping over to fit through a small gap.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the visual path of spaceships as we've seen in the original trilogy. But also, again, what I think when Star Wars is at its best, it's doing this to some extent, is calling back to classic Hollywood action filmmaking. Right. So there's a lot of Ben-Hur in here, like the two racers trying to fuck each other over and smash up each other's pods in motion. It's more family. I mean, obviously, like real people died on Ben-Hur, and also people in the movie died. Yeah. Here, we're not allowed to see people in the movie. We're not even allowed to see people in the movie die.
Yeah.
Because every time anyone crashes and clearly dies, we have to get the A-team sort of
the brush off.
Dusting we have to know that Sebulba survived. Not only because he's in the next movie, but it goes against the family-friendly feel that Lucas is trying to foster. For Anakin to be sort of murdering everyone in his wake.
Right.
That's the next 2 movies. Yeah. No problem then, but right now he's 9.
He missed an opportunity though, didn't he? I mean, you know, sow that seed early, I say. Your character's going to become the most evil man in the galaxy. Go ahead and let him kill a few racers.
And again, Lucas specifically didn't want to do that with this movie. The point he wanted to make was that anyone can turn bad, even the most innocent person you can imagine. So he needed to establish that first.
Well, and we talked at great length.
I'm not saying that's the right choice, but
yeah, exactly.
Again, it's like where you Lucas says something and you go, I guess that's what you did do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Whether I'm not sure I like it, but I guess that you followed through.
You followed through on that. But there always feels like a disconnect to me because there's such a jump in age from the first actor to the second actor, despite your arguments about how Jedis grow quicker.
I'm starting to realize now that a lot of what I know about these prequels is like something that someone on the playground has told me that is definitely not true. It goes all the way back to Return of the Jedi and me thinking that bits of Jabba can be seen.
Oh, in the explosion,
emerging from the explosion of the
Jaws
barge.
3D style.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
But speaking of Jabba, you know, he's slept through it all.
Yeah, of course.
Blissfully unaware he would one day be visited by 2 droids not 3 feet away from him.
Yeah, exactly.
And the winner of the race will later sell him the bounty of one of his smugglers.
Yeah.
You know? There's some ring theory for you. Have we talked about ring theory before?
I don't think we have.
Because, this is one of the ways, I think, you know, out of desperation more than anything else, that people have tried to connect this to the original trilogy, saying that instead of seeing that you have to see them as a symbiont circle, I suppose. That's like a continuous loop. So the end of Jedi becomes the beginning of this, and then it goes round again. And you know this is a reflection of Return of the Jedi. Attack of the Clones is Empire Strikes Back, and then Revenge of the Sith is Star Wars, the original.
Right.
It sort of works. I don't know how intentional that was.
Well, yeah, it's
but-
like you gotta, when you come up with these theories, you might have questions, and then you have to force some pieces in. You have to really
It's
wedge it
certainly-
in.
yeah.
But on the surface, you know,
Yeah.
it sounds like such a good argument. It's of course that's
It's
what they
certainly
did.
the case. It's certainly the case that Revenge of the Sith it was meant to flow directly into
Of course,
the beginning
yeah.
of New Hope until they made a movie
Until they
that
made
flowed
Rogue One. Yeah, exactly.
and it flowed even more directly into
Yeah.
into New Hope.
All right. Well,
So-
I mean, you know, it's funny because I don't really have much more to say about the pod race itself. I mean, I've said everything that I can about how exciting and thrilling it is. And like you said, that moment where he's got to, you know, just fix his power coupling.
It's amazing,
And it's great.
It is great cinema.
The only thing, I guess that's not fair. I was going to say the only thing, I just wish it would make even more sense to me if he was older. But, you know, I do think
This
that,
is where
I think
where it dawns on you that this is what Obi-Wan meant when he said, "Your father was already a great pilot when I
right,
first met
yeah.
him." It's like, oh, this is what he meant.
See, but
it's
I
hard
always
to take.
didn't like that. Yeah, I don't, you
No,
know,
again, I'm not saying it's good, but this is when you realize
going
that
back to our
that's
last
what Lucas
episode,
thinks.
if he was 15 or 16
Yeah.
and you met him and he was a great pilot then that makes more sense to me. But in
And-
this
and they-
moment, it's, you know, it's like a kid's fantasy is what Anakin or Annie is in this movie. From a
And
child's
they get-
perspective, not an
Yeah.
adult making the film perspective, you know?
Again, I think that's what Lucas is going through. I think that's
I
what
do too. Yeah, right. But I
Yeah,
just think
so it's like
I just
how
think
much-
it's still the wrong choice.
Yeah, but for some reason I'm attracted to people who make the bad choice well. Hence my love of Superman 3. Like it's follow through. That's what I'm
Right.
attracted to in filmmaking, and this is following through on surreally bad ideas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He takes a bad idea as far as it possibly can go
There's a lot to be said for that,
to middling effect.
and in some ways I think you come out better. You know.
Right.
You come out with potentially less detractors because they could always go, well, you know, that's he didn't he didn't compromise.
I do think, no offense, sand people.
No, you create offense by saying sand people.
But I think that's one of the best jokes in the entire series. Them shooting at these fucking pod racers.
Oh, yeah, I know. I think, and you know, again, that feels like we're harking back to the Searchers-like quality of the original Star Wars. There,
Yeah.
that sense of a Wild West,
Yeah.
open range.
Not just that, but I also love the idea that Tusken Raiders have this kind of sense of humor.
Yeah.
This is fun for them, you know? That's hysterical. I love it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, then
Again, doesn't
Anakin's
bear
got
too
a...
much thinking about because they end up killing Anakin's step half brother. Anyway, that's not. You don't need to think about that. Yeah.
Not quite yet.
Isn't it like anything? It's like this was, such a great moment, and then you think about what that means narratively
Yeah. Down
over
the
the
line.
two trilogies, and you go, "Oh, actually, that's the worst thing." They could
Why
have
the
done."
fuck did you do that, George? Well, now Anakin has to kind of break up with his mom, right?
He doesn't have to. Qui-Gon takes him away from his mother. I mean,
That's
this is
true.
like, they turn him into a child soldier essentially, don't
Yeah.
they? And
Yeah.
it's kind of I don't know if it is more critically done in the Mandalorian. It's done better. It's still romanticized, but this idea of
Mm-hmm.
grooming a child to be a soldier in
Right.
essence. I know they don't think of themselves as soldiers, but they are.
Well, because I guess our experience of it is knowing kids, say, in Africa being kidnapped and then being, raised to be a soldier in an army in which they kidnap and murder people, and that's not a good fun thought.
It's a glossy version of that. I mean, they at least acknowledge that Qui-Gon has some guilt about it because they have a reaction shot of him sort of looking ambivalent, or Liam Neeson's thinking.
Well, and I think
about when the day will end.
Yeah,
the day will end.
And
Lucas... but that's the way it always came across to me. Like, should I be doing this? Because he's the rebel Jedi. He's the one who...
Right, yeah. He's the one that should know better.
We don't know that yet, though. But anyway.
That's true, yeah, right. Hasn't come up yet.
No, it hasn't come up yet.
But I also don't like that Lucas is trying to let the audience off the hook by having the mom say, no, this is what's got to happen.
I don't know, that all kind of reads to me. I know, maybe again, because I'm a father, and
I don't know. You said that in the last episode. Yeah, it just that this scene plays very cold to me, and it does not pull at my heartstrings in the way I want it to.
I think it's a really poetic scene. I find it absolutely devastating. I think Jake Lloyd plays it really well. I think it's the best use of him.
I'll agree with that. I think he's really good, and I think he's.
And then there's that line about stop. You can't stop the suns from setting, which in a movie which doesn't have very artful dialogue, to put it mildly. I think.
Right.
I think it's poetic, and it's also poetic in the sense it rhymes with the image of the two suns and. From Star Wars, and I think it's less taking the audience off the hook. I think it's a mother trying to take her son off the hook.
So I think it's trying to do both.
Yeah, but I just love how straight the scene's played. Right, they use Williams's music. There's hardly any CGI or droids, which is noticeable in this film. It's just acting. It's just words.
When a Jedi has to tear a son away from his mother, there's no background CGI robot breakdancing. Good on you.
And there could have been.
Phantom
Menace. Could have been.
Yeah.
And
it wasn't out of the realm of possibility, and they made that choice. Fine.
And in general, I think tonally, Lucas really shines when doing coming of age type drama, like American Graffiti, the original Star Wars.
Yeah.
There's a shot choice I love, and again, I think it's easy to miss in a movie full of bizarre shot choices. There's also one in the scene which I want to talk about, but where after Anakin leaves, all his friends run out of frame, and they choose to end the shot that way, and that as the audience, I'm sat there going, he's never going to see them again.
Right.
They're gone. They're gone from his life. His life is, his life as he knows it is over. And that's all done with a, just where they choose to edit.
Yeah.
I find it absolutely devastating. What I find devastating in a different way is a C-3PO POV shot.
Exactly. Thank you. That shot is baffling to me.
I mean,
it's the only time he really chooses to do it, ever.
And POV shots are so rarely done in the series. Why would you burn it on C-3PO of all people? I mean, the only logic I can apply to it is that Lucas is sort of thinking, well, we see these movies through the droid's eyes. Let's do it literally.
Yeah,
but this is the one movie where you don't see it through the droid's eyes.
Exactly. It's supposed to be through the droid's eyes in the first series, or certainly that first movie. I think he's on record as saying that this movie is supposed to be through Padme's eyes, and that's we
don't even know who Padme is.
I know,
for most
it's
of it.
So crazy.
How can we know what her perspective is? We don't even know who she is.
And I think I heard that on the commentary, and I said, "What are you talking about?"
Other times, I think he just says things to troll Star Wars fans.
You think so? I don't know.
Sometimes I think he puts things in Star Wars movies to troll Star Wars fans.
All right. Well, then we have a fight.
Well, we have half a fight
Right.
that starts in the middle.
That starts in the middle and is
In media res, if you will.
Yeah, purposefully obscured so that we don't see too much, because he wants to save that.
And that was a choice because they filmed the first half of it. They just cut the establishing shots, so it's supposed to feel like it's all happening suddenly without any prior knowledge. It's also our first saber on saber contact in the entire movie.
Right.
So it's kind of I guess it's like a trailer for the end of for the Duel of the Fates.
Yeah, exactly, right.
Is what they wanted to end up doing, but it's an odd scene, an odd choice.
I say just go ahead and do it.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like
it's not going to be a huge, long, drawn-out battle like the Duel of the Fates. It's not going to be that, but you could go ahead and show us the fight as it actually was. You know, what's wrong with that?
Maybe it's another trying to do POV again. This time, like, how Qui-Gon is experiencing what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the better choice is just to film it as it is and then, tell Liam Neeson who's perfectly capable of this kind of thing, to act it.
Right, right.
So it's an odd moment. And again, you don't get to see as much of Darth Maul as you would like.
Yeah, exactly.
Speaking of robot legs, this is where we get the walking throne.
Yeah.
We cut to Naboo. We've got a cool Tim Burton-esque set design here.
Okay.
I would have been satisfied with if these were the only artificial legs in the trilogy. I would have been satisfied.
You would have been happy.
Yeah. So we cut back to Naboo for the walking throne.
Mm-hmm.
And we're back to the journey back from Tatooine to Coruscant.
Yeah.
Jar Jar sleeping in exactly the way you'd expect a 1930s cartoon animal to. And I like the scene. I up to a point, and I know what you're gonna say. I like the scene between Anakin and Padme, and if they just kept it that she was a surrogate mother for him
instead of,
then it would have been, I guess, yeah.
Yeah, but we know going in that they're going to be the parents. Of course we do.
Oh, yeah. But then that means everything is based on Oedipal desire.
Yes. That's why you don't cast somebody this fucking young.
Yeah. I think they try to course correct in the next movie by making Anakin the sort of sexual predator, but right now it's all in Padme. The balls, yeah, exactly. The balls are quite literally in Padme's court.
They switch off. They switch off predator.
That's not only sexual innuendo; it's also regal innuendo.
Well, and they're going to tell the Jedi Council about Darth Maul and Anakin at the same time.
Yeah, we get daytime Coruscant, so now we know it's not a night city.
Right.
And we know this because Rick Ollier gives us an audio tour of the city.
Right. The funny part
I'm really surprised in all the tertiary Star Wars media there isn't Rick Ollier takes you across Coruscant.
There's a lot of talk when they're in the Jedi Council room and they're giving their report. It's so funny. I keep going back to it, but listening to both Lucas and the effects people talking about the white glow they were able to get around people, because they're in a brightly lit room, and that's what it's like. So we worked really hard on that. I just think, like, where
didn't put any effort into designing the room itself.
Focus, yeah, exactly.
And Coruscant, how do you feel about Coruscant? I feel like, the fact that it's still in Star Wars media means that it worked.
Yeah.
Because Andor's gone back there, Mandalorian's gone back there. I mean, it's clearly based on Fritz Lang's Metropolis, like everything else in modern science fiction.
Yeah.
But I think it works quite well. It looks good. I think it's a good-looking cityscape.
It is. It's one of the pluses for the effects of the movie.
And I think it's also
me.
factored in that kind of post-Blade Runner Fifth Element
Yeah,
quality
right.
as
Yeah.
well. Maybe more in the next movie, but there's still hints of it. It's like a third-generation reimagining of Metropolis.
Right. Well, because in the next movie we get more of the nighttime, and that feels more Blade Runner.
Feels and sounds more Blade Runner
Yeah.
as well.
Here's something I don't understand about this movie at all.
Terrence Stamp.
Yeah, well, the lack of use of Terrence Stamp, for sure. But we also,
Carry on.
you know,
Just a guess.
we also get this thing about there seems to be no proof of an invasion on Naboo.
The proof has been given.
We've got an awful lot of fucking technology going on in these movies.
Yeah.
Nobody can fucking snap a photo or something and send it to Coruscant and say,
Well, they
look at
don't
all
need
these
it.
fucking things going on. I don't get
They don't
it.
need it because, you know, the breakdown in communications can only mean one thing.
Invasion.
As C.O. Bibble told us. Along the same lines of you know, the Coruscant has lasted, this view of Senate politics
Mm-hmm.
was kind of informed by the political deadlocks of the time of
Right.
the Clinton administration, where, you know, Republicans and Democrats became entrenched. It's still like that now, if not
Right.
more so. So it resonates now. And, you know, this is the Senate that we see in Andor as well. Like, they've really run with this
Yeah.
this notion of deadlock politics,
Yeah.
even into the representation of the Imperial era.
But it made me start to laugh just to think about, you know, right now we're in a place in our politics in which nobody actually takes a look at what's going on in the entrenched politics from the day to day.
Yeah.
It's just my side and that other side. And I wonder if this movie had a hand in that.
Sure.
You
Well,
know,
it's
this
it's
started
certainly
all of
become
it.
more true.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But as you said, we get into, before we go to the actual Senate itself, we go into the Jedi Council.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, this movie's throwing stars at us because we've had Terrence Stamp
Yeah,
as the
right.
Chancellor, and now it's Sam Jackson.
Now it's Sam Jackson.
A very inauspicious introduction for such a big star of 90s cinema.
Can I ask you something? What do you think of Samuel L. Jackson as Mace Windu in these movies? Is he good?
It's a good question, because I feel like he's doing well what they asked him to do, but what they asked him to do is a waste of his talents, and
Yeah.
also a little bit racist. Because in the Jedi Council scenes, he's basically the DMV employee. He's like a DMV employee. He's like, the code forbids it. Sorry,
Yeah.
nothing we can do. Which
Let
I
me
think is
take your-
really the
let me-
only black guy in the
Let
room.
me take
is
your
saying
paper
that.
and stamp it there.
Yeah, really, the only black guy in the room is saying that.
Yeah.
But also, I feel like all they want him for in this scene is, again, aesthetics, the poses
Mhm.
that he can do.
Right.
You know, the finger on the chin look.
Right. Right.
And I would argue that in the next movie, he gets to let loose a bit more.
He does
and we
get
see
to
a little
let-
more
yeah.
of what he can do.
But there are moments in this movie where, and I see it happen with almost every actor, less so with Liam Neeson, but which is funny because he's like so clearly having a miserable time. But
He was so miserable.
but he's bringing the goods, I think. And there's a thing, there's a thing with Star Wars language. I don't know why people have been, when the first trilogy came out, Mark Hamill, I think, was derided as not being a very good actor. And I think he's always been good in these movies. And if you watch extras on the original trilogy of watching, say, like a Kurt Russell try to be Luke Skywalker,
Yeah.
you immediately think he doesn't get it. He doesn't get the world. He doesn't understand it. And
That's a very
Mark
good point.
Hamill did. He you could just tell that he understands
Well,
the language.
look what he did in The Last Jedi. Like
Yeah.
it wasn't his idea of the character, but he
Right.
played it to the hilts. He
And
played it better than anyone could have
than
done.
anybody possibly could. That's how I felt too.
And he didn't even agree with what he was doing.
And but there are there's moments where I think Samuel L. Jackson doesn't get it, like he doesn't understand it. And then there are moments where I think, oh, that was really great. That's why you get Sam Jackson.
Yeah.
So it's an uneven performance to me that starts to take off in the next film. And
why? I mean, and this goes for all the Jedi. It's just like we don't see them standing up. Seems like such an obvious thing, but
yeah,
the first time we see them, they're sitting down, and they stay sat down for the entire duration of the film, and this one scene kind of demystifies the Jedis as an institution from this mythical version we have of them as like Arthurian knights to a series of strange-headed people sitting in lounges.
Right.
It's so strange, such a strange, anemic choice. So, yeah. Also, and I go back and forth about how, and then this theory's been posited as in defense of the prequel trilogy, that the sort of story arc of this trilogy is how the Jedis fucked everything up because of their own hubris.
Mm-hmm.
I think they occasionally lean into this, but I don't think there's much of it in this film. I think at this point, Lucas still wants you to believe that everything the Jedi say and do is correct. I think it changes as the trilogy goes on. Because Yoda's speaking a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
Everything he says about Anakin will come to fruition.
And it's one of my favorite Sam Jackson moments, too, when he says, I think Qui-Gon just asks, is the boy to be trained? And he just says, no, he's not. I fucking love that.
Oh, forbids it.
Yeah.
Well, that's his DMV moment, isn't it?
It's like so good in that moment.
This is an out-of-state license.
He just cuts Qui-Gon's legs from underneath him. No, go fuck yourself. Not gonna happen. I love it. All right, why don't we take a break?
Okay, sure.
And then we'll come back.
We've been talking for several hours.
Yeah.
Probably a good idea.
I need a drink of water, for fuck's sake.
It's all that Tatooine talk. It gets your lips dry.
It gets you dry. It's hot.
You want to go and suck from a moisture evaporator. Or evaporate. I like to think I know something about beer. But nowadays, even I get overwhelmed when confronted by the exhaustive selection of craft beers they have at bars, breweries, and even grocery stores. Back in the day you had one, maybe two craft beers to choose from, and if you were confused, you ordered a Guinness. But in beer-stinations like San Diego, the craft beer options lately are in double, sometimes even triple digits. So what's a beer drinker to do? You need what I need. The Vegas Beer Guys. Your beer of choice should be a perfect blend of malt and hops. And so a live show about beer needs that same balance. And the Vegas Beer Guys matches beer expert Dan Aker with self-proclaimed beer novice Stephen J. Weiss. The results are eminently drinkable. They're on Facebook, they're on Instagram. They'll try new beers, they'll tell you about beer. Think of them as your beer Sherpas guiding you up a foamy-headed mountain to reach the peak of your pint. God, I need a beer.
And we're back, ladies and gentlemen. Tom and I are here discussing The Phantom Menace. Now it's time to talk Senate politics.
Just before that, do you think we will talk as much about the Star Wars sequels?
Oh.
I have a feeling this is the peak of our indulgence.
You're probably right, but my initial
I feel like
thought...
there's much less to say about like a Rise of Skywalker.
I think you're right.
I might be wrong. I don't know. I would just, and you know what I'm gonna say every time. J. Abrams cocked it up. What do you want me to say? So, I won't do that.
Yes, you will.
I know, but I'll elaborate.
But It was what I was just going to say was, I do not put it past you to talk J.J. Abrams out of the fucking room for hours upon hours.
He talked
it
himself.
Could be longer,
sir. He doesn't need my help. He talked himself out of the room.
My note is a vote of no confidence happens. That was easy. You know, it's funny because...
This is the first time we see the Senate floor.
Yeah.
Which is visually very accomplished. Kind of visionary. Yeah. I don't know whether to call it set design or special effects. I guess a combination of both. But everything that's...
Probably more effects, but...
Yeah, but that's all there is. Like, the what's happening is not matching the visual scale and grandeur. I mean, it's just mired in protocol.
Right.
Superman 4
But we talked about that in the last episode, you know. I mean, Lucas, for better or worse, he is going to devote 3 movies to this storyline.
Yeah. Isn't it also...
This is as big, if not a bigger through line than Anakin becoming Darth Vader.
I have a bombshell, but I'm going to save it for the end because we won't be able to think about anything else.
Oh, and I'm the one with the fucking promises and wrapped gift bombs. How dare you?
No, I'm not. I'm not mystery boxing you. I'm not J.J. Abrams.
Oh, okay.
I'm purposefully not saying this because it's such a bombshell we won't recover from it. It has to be said at the end of the episode. But what I will
definitely don't want to get to the end of this episode and then have a mystery box open that makes us talk for another hour.
That's
so
what I mean. I'm not J.J. Abrams.
All right, fine.
But also the size of the Galactic Senate underlines just how insignificant the events surrounding one planet are. Which you kind of feel already, but when you see what the galaxy is, you're like, what's going on in Naboo make any difference to anything?
Who gives a shit? Exactly.
I'm sure you were delighted to see a couple, as Spielberg fan as you are, see a couple of delegates.
I always like that.
Oh wow!
Spielberg
did not see that coming.
I like that Spielberg and Lucas have enough whimsy within each other to just give each other a nod some way, somehow, every once in a while in their movies too.
J.J. Abrams does that with himself.
Hey, we're not at J.J. Abrams yet, okay?
Yeah.
Keep it to George.
I opened a different kind of box. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm glad you like that because it does strike me that what Lucas is doing here is special editioning the meaning of the Yoda scene in E.T.
Right.
Because now when E.T. says home, home, it's because they belong to the same galactic Senate.
Right.
He's
just having a little fun, and I'm okay with that.
This is where we see, Palpatine's daytime look. I like this dimension of having the Emperor, and that's all we know that he is at this point, begin as a whispering political schemer. I feel like that's historically real. That's how Stalin began, for instance. It's kind of everyone's.
And you have that sense that you have that sense that Lucas is probably a history buff.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right. And there's something. It's interesting with this movie this set of movies, because this takes up such a chunk of screen time.
Yeah.
How much Palpatine is throwing this comment this way and whispering this over here and doing this. And it's, Ian McDiarmid is so good that he's always great as he's doing it. But I think it's to great and middling effect for the movies themselves.
Mm-hmm. I'd agree with that.
I'll wait till we get to Sith, but I wish it was. There are moments where I wish that the characters were not so clueless, because it seems so overt that I think clearly this fucker's up to no good. Why don't you know that? Now I don't know if that's my background, coming in knowing he's the Emperor, but it there seems like there are selfish moments
But
that are
that's the interesting.
clearly designed for him.
This is why I think like the representation of politics in here is nuanced to a fault, because that can all be explained away by the vanity of politicians.
Right.
And so up to a point, he's doing nothing that, any politician would do.
Any crooked politician wouldn't do.
He's not even particularly crooked. He's kind of one of the good guys.
Yeah, right.
But, if someone is not asked to leave power, they will not leave power.
Mm-hmm.
And they're specifically asking him not to leave power. So
yeah,
it's easy to spin it, and Yoda gives him a look in the next movie, so it's enough, I think.
I remember that look.
It's such a good. It's like, hang on a minute.
Wait a second. Are you a piece of shit?
So, and we talked a little bit about this, but the Jedi Council say they won't train Anakin.
Yeah, he will. He won't pass the tests. He's.
I like the lighting in this scene. This kind of where the scene is at sunset.
Sunset,
because the whole dark light, having it in between dark and light, it makes thematic sense for the movie. I've never understood what the test was about that they give him.
The Jedi trials.
Well, it's not. That's the Jedi trials.
I think so.
What, looking at a speeder? It's just it's like looking at a picture of a speeder, and then they react as if we're supposed to know whether that was the right or wrong answer. It's not even clear screen what's going on.
Well, it's like Ghostbusters. A couple of wavy lines.
I thought of it was maybe like, and George Lucas likes his Buddhism as well. It was like the test they do for the Dalai Lama. Is it the Dalai? No, not the Dalai. Like the reincarnation. Yeah, the Dalai Lama, where they set out like 5 objects or something like that, and you whichever there's a right one to pick, but only the true reincarnation would know. And I was wondering what. Yeah. But again, it just looks like I was like, well, technically he's right. It is a speeder.
Mm-hmm.
Was that, why was that wrong, or was it wrong? I don't know I know nothing.
I think it came up shortly after this, because I've got a note here that says, I think Yoda is talking about how fear is the root cause of being bad.
Yeah.
And I thought, maybe because I'm a human being and Jedis look like human beings, like, who the fuck doesn't get scared? What are you talking about?
Which again,
when I'm defending my own life, I shouldn't be even a little bit scared?
Yeah, and also, by the way, later on this movie proves that Jedi always attack first.
Yeah, yeah.
I think the first time a Jedi, is only acting in self-defense is way into the next movie. Mm-hmm. The Jedi strike first in this movie, again and again and again. But besides that, what you said just reminded me of what Norm Macdonald said about Bill Cosby. They said, people say that people say that the worst part of it was the worst part of what Bill Cosby did was the lying. I think it was the raping.
Yeah.
And I think you're making a similar point there. It's sort of like it's not the full story. But again, it lends credence to those people who say the Jedi were wrong. The Jedi are responsible for turning Anakin into Darth Vader.
Mm-hmm.
Because they are trying to repress the very things that make him, let's call it human, for the sake of argument.
Yeah, right.
They're trying to repress those things in him, and that is ultimately what turns him to the dark side.
Right.
Because in trying to repress his fear, he becomes just fear.
Fear, right.
And if they'd have indulged that fear to some extent, given as well, he's just been separated from his mother. I know the movie doesn't want to talk about that.
He's got some shit going on. Yeah.
And Yoda straight in oh, miss your mother, do you?
What are you fucking taunting me for, asshole?
But when we get back to the Senate, one of the people who's up for the Chancellor after. So Terrence Stamp has a whole storyline in this movie, which is
sort of, kind of, yeah.
Doesn't feel important, and then at the end of the movie you realize that may have been the most important thing that's happened in all of Star Wars. But there's a few different people.
But it also seems, things seem, I don't know, it's murky at best what's going on in the Senate, because they talk about how you need this one vote of no confidence, but apparently, like, just Queen Amidala saying, I must give a vote of no confidence means, like, Terrence Stamp immediately just sits down. Like he just lost it. There's not even a vote or anything. It's all you need is one person to say it, and apparently you're out.
It's really funny because when I think about it, I think Terrence Stamp is good casting here because the way he played General Zod showed that he's a good stooge. Like, the great thing about the way he played General Zod is that, he never came across as the brightest spark. He felt like other people were using him for their own ends. And that's what's happening here, but they've added nothing. They've added nothing to that. Yeah. It's so funny. The other day I was at I sometimes take my son to a comic book store. He said, trying to claim that it's somehow my son's idea.
I was like it was his idea. Get out of here.
And he likes to look at the Star Wars. So he really genuinely does like to look at the Star Wars action figures. And there was one, and it was just like Chancellor Valorum. And he said, "Who's that?" And I just went, it's not even worth me explaining.
It's so not important. There's also, because we're kind of going back and forth, where, we see Palpatine as Palpatine, and then we'll see him as a hologram as the Emperor again. And there are things that I can't figure out in this movie, because he keeps saying, "I need this queen to sign the treaty." And yet her not signing the treaty seems to help him get into power. Because now she's now she's at Coruscant, and she's the one giving the vote of no confidence.
The plan makes less sense than the one they went into Jabba's palace with.
Yeah, totally. It just, nothing ever, it seems a little strange at best.
Yeah.
And it always feels like that the plan is set, and yet the plan is evolving all the time.
And this never gets resolved, because, the next two movies, you can't tell. There's some kind of a long con going on, but you've no idea who's in on the con and who's outside of the con.
Yeah.
And it actually gets harder to fathom. But, this is what's happening now, the contest for the new chancellorship. This is, in terms of the rest of this trilogy and the original trilogy, this is really all that matters in the entire movie.
Yeah, right.
The fact that it ends up being Palpatine and not Bail Antilles from Alderaan, who is officially the most Star Wars sounding name ever.
That's another thing I want to talk about, the names. What'd you think of the names when this movie first came out?
What do you mean? What names?
Qui-Gon.
C.O. Bibble.
Yeah.
Newt Gunray.
Exactly. Newt Gunray.
But
perfect
it's
example.
like the Rolling Stones. It sounds weird the first time you say it, and you watch it enough, and then it rolls off the tongue.
Yeah, I think you might be right. I just remember thinking at the time...
Rick Ollier?
Yeah, I remember thinking at the time, I just remember none of these names sound as good as Luke Skywalker or Han Solo.
Yeah.
They seem too Star Wars-y to me.
That's it. I mean, it's sort of it's Star Wars turned on itself, in a sense. It's like eating its own flesh, kind of name.
Is this about the part? This is one of my favorite parts in the whole movie, because I have a note. My next note is that Anakin walks up to Qui-Gon and he says, I've been wondering, and I thought they should have added a line of dialogue that says, like I'm sure the audience is, what the fuck is a midichlorian? And they go
the
through that whole
midichlorian
speech.
science lecture, yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, I just
Again,
I
which makes
just
it
love it.
And I feel like if you were gonna do this, you would describe it in a way that distances it from traditional eugenics theory. But at the end of it, you go, "Oh, it's just eugenics." Okay, it's even more Nazi than I thought it was.
Right. Oh man, every time I see it, it really gets me. I've been wondering.
It's like Qui-Gon is Troy McClure.
I have a feeling the audience might be confused by something, so I've been wondering. Can you explain this to me, please?
It's like Qui-Gon is Troy McClure in one of those public information films that they watch at the school in The Simpsons.
Right. Hi, I'm Qui-Gon. You might
Can I
remember
go
me
to
from such
Bovine
films
University?
Yeah.
So an Anakin is seen talking to Rick Ollier and figuring out how to pilot a ship, which is the movie desperately trying to catch Anakin up to what Obi-Wan said of him 30 years in the future.
Right.
It's like, in what ways could he have been a great pilot without actually being a pilot?
And having almost everything he does in the last act of this movie be by accident.
Which, ironically, is exactly the reasoning they come up with for for the kid being able to pilot a plane in Dial of Destiny.
Right.
Same exact reasoning.
Yeah.
He talked to a pilot.
He talked to a pilot who was drunkenly helping him, drunkenly explaining things on a table.
Yeah. Well, he'd just come from an episode of Pan Am.
Yeah.
This is where, so the scene between Jar Jar and Queen Amidala.
Mm-hmm.
Even as I'm saying that, I'm questioning whether this was Amidala. I guess it was, right? It's not Padme. Is this?
I think I think it's the Queen now.
It's the Queen now, yeah.
Because that's what I have written down.
Yeah, and it's sort of like it's a well written scene ruined by silly voices. Both of them. She's talking in this very strange way, and Jar Jar is just Jar Jar, so he's
automatically silly and annoying.
And this was the famous the again infamous line, "We's the people gonna die," which South Park were able to.
The South Park was
parody
able to get into their movie
within the same year.
Yeah.
In what I think is probably one of the.
I mean, I think that movie came out a month or two later.
Yeah, it's one of the most. I mean, it's up there with the E.T.
So they saw it in a preview.
Oh wow!
I think.
Wow.
And then that's how they got it into their movie.
It's like Airplane 2 with the E.T.
If memory serves.
E.T. hand.
Yeah. Right.
It's like that tight. And then you realize, like, why does Jar Jar matter? He matters because he's Gungan, and he has an in with the Gungan warriors, and that's it.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
And they're gonna meet with each other and
at least Jar Jar matters a little bit.
Okay, fine.
Well, he didn't before. By the time he's done in this trilogy.
Yeah, yeah.
Boy, will he boyo will he matter. And then
but she's gonna meet with the Gungan, and they're gonna make a plan. Yeah, they go back to Naboo. And...
Well, first of all they get there, and the Gungans are all gone. They've gone to their sacred place, which one doesn't seem very secret, and two seems to be built on the grounds of a deserted Dagobah theme park. But here's where we get what they think is the big reveal, that Queen Amidala and Padme are switches.
And it seems as though she's been getting over on Qui-Gon the whole time. But Jar Jar, who's astonished that this has happened, and Qui-Gon, of course, gives Obi-Wan a little look like, we knew that the whole time, didn't we?
Is that what that look's supposed to mean?
I think so.
I thought it was she had us going.
I seem to recall in the commentary.
Okay.
Lucas giving up.
The
Yeah, we
commentary.
knew the whole time.
Is this the same commentary where Lucas said it's all from Padme's perspective? I don't know if
Yes,
he's a
right.
reliable narrator.
You're right. You're absolutely right.
And then we cut back to the Emperor and Darth Maul, and this is where he literally says, "Let them make the first move," and I'm like, wait, the Sith act more like the Jedi, and the Jedi act more like the Sith.
Yeah, exactly.
Jar
But
Jar
you're gonna get, this is the beginning of kind of classic. Well, not classic. I was gonna say classics. I was gonna say classic Star Wars.
We walk that back. Brilliant.
Well, I mean, the first Star Wars movie is a very linear story.
You can use
and then you're going to get into multiple storylines in
use classic.
Empire. But I was thinking more specifically of Jedi. The end of Jedi, you're going to get several storylines, three storylines going on at once. And that's what's happening here.
Yeah, I mean, that would, there's footage of George Lucas looking at the storyboards and saying exactly that. The Jedi had 3 intercut sequences. Phantom Menace is going to have 4 because it's 1 more. He literally says that out loud. Yeah.
What's the 4th one?
Well, it's like 3.5 if you think about it, because there's Jedis. There's what's going on in Naboo, which you could split into 2.
Yeah, well, I have the battle droids with the Gungans. I've got the battle droids with the Gungans.
Yeah.
I've got the palace battle, and I've got the space battle. What's the 4th one?
Anakin.
He's in the space battle.
No, he's not in the space battle.
He is.
He is the space battle. But he's separate from the rest of the pilots. He's got his own storyline going on.
Whatever. He's part of space battle.
Okay. But I still think it's an attempt to up the ante on what they did in Jedi.
All right. I don't.
Attempt is the key word there. Jar Jar gets promoted to general.
Mm-hmm.
Which is already a meaningless promotion in Star Wars after fucking Lando Calrissian got that title.
Right.
But this goes too far.
Mm-hmm.
There's, again, speaking of, like, imagery that rhymes with Return of the Jedi, many Gungans died to bring us this information.
Yeah.
Except no one's sad about it, right? It's just like,
no, yeah.
It's like both everyone else and the Gungans are fine just being cannon fodder, aren't they? Really?
I mean, when you think about it, when she has her conversation with them, with the Gungans, I mean, it's like she's kind of getting over on them. She's humoring the boss. Basically, it's, I just need you to do this, and a lot of you are gonna die, but I'm okay with that.
Yeah. And we cut away again to Palpatine or Darth Sidious or the Emperor.
Or the Emperor, right? One of his 43 names.
Or if you take the sequels into account, maybe Darth Plagueis as well. And Snoke. The first moment of genuine menace in a movie that has the word menace in the title is where he says, wipe them out, all of them.
Yeah, all of them.
And it's a well-written line delivered with genuine relish and menace and
yeah, exactly.
And then
that's why it's in the preview.
And then the Gungan army come out of the fog, and it's Buster Keaton for the next 20 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. Because also, not only that, you have the Gungans versus the least threatening robots in the history of mankind.
Right, we've already shown that the Jedis can
we've already
slice through them like butter.
Yeah, exactly. So we've already talked about in the last episode about how unthreatening and silly they are.
This is one of the moments in the trailer which gave me an entirely false impression of this movie. With the Gungan army coming out of the fog.
Mm-hmm.
And when you see it in the trailer, you're like, oh, that's going to be one of the best moments in the movie.
Yeah.
And then it's pure computer game after that.
Right.
But, like many things in this movie, they put some mist in, hoping it will help.
Cover.
And we're back to transparent bubble shields.
Mm-hmm.
Again,
which you can't shoot through, but you can walk through.
Right. Again, we just we can do this effect. We're going to do it again.
So we're going to do it.
And then the battle droids, when they get... So not only have they been established that they're not effective, but when they get blown up, they sing extracts from Peter Frampton songs. They have these kind of like vocoder dirges as they die, which makes them seem even less threatening than they are, which is none more threatening.
None more threatening.
I think we made the point in the past episode that they're basically doing everything on Naboo that they did about an hour earlier.
Yeah.
It's the same
shtick.
Yeah, and they're keeping, and basically they're making, I don't know if anyone says this particular phrase, but they're going about it as if they have a secret plan that only they know.
Right.
And that secret plan is, there's a couple of guns in one of the chairs.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's it.
That's all we need.
We've got it. It's like we'll get into the throne. I think. Oh, here's what she says. She says, "We'll get into the throne room, and I'll take care of it from there."
Yeah.
And I was expecting that she would turn the throne room into like a, some kind of giant weapon or something. But it's just,
either weapon or fortress. Yeah.
And again, it's counting on them not having found those guns already, which you think they would have done in seizing the palace.
Oh man, that's good.
And in the air, there's a kind of a dogfight. They look like they're from World War I, but they're fighting as if it's World War II.
Yeah.
So,
but I mean, I think I mentioned this in the last episode. This is this portion of the movie is the portion, and it's the end of your movie, so you want it to be better. But there's one thing I think that saves it all, and that's the saber fight. But other than that, it's a lot of, like you said earlier, everything between droids and gun feel like a video game.
Mm-hmm.
And I think out in space, it feels very much like that too. The 3D ships that they have going on in this particular battle, it's not as good as it will be in the next two movies. It gets better.
It's very it's also on a style level very kitschy compared to the sort of rugged industrial look of the trench run, both trench runs.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And again, like sometimes the sophistication of politics in this movie harms it, especially in an action sequence, because the droid assembly line goes on for so long. You realize it's kind of satire, right? Because it's like the military-industrial complex.
Yeah, right.
The sort of mass production of robot soldiers.
Well,
and they're also, they're setting up in retrospect.
To look like
they're setting up the Clone
I think it's
Wars.
made to. Yeah, that's true. Because when
they're technically
narratively, when I guess the Emperor sees how useless these robots are, he needs to devise a better group of soldiers.
But
so he's gonna.
Do you think that was the end game? Do you think he knows what the Clone Wars are at this point?
Hard to say. I don't know. Yeah.
Do you think he decided while he was? I think he decided while he was doing the sequence that that's what the Clone Wars were going to be: robot versus clones.
Mm-hmm.
I think the thought passed through his mind while he was watching the footage. He said, "Oh, I guess a robot is a kind of a clone."
But I think he's also clearly trying to evoke, the images of Nazi Germany with
well, the music
rows
certainly
and rows
is.
and rows of soldiers.
John Williams is using his Nazi music from Last Crusade, so that helps.
That goes to your arguments.
The one score of John Williams. One Williams, as I call him.
Oh boy.
And it's not even. I was to say it's not even funny. That's exactly what I mean. The Gungans versus the Ewoks in terms of warriorship, there's no contest. Jar Jar begins unsuccessfully swinging his weapon around. At least Wicket builds up to that.
Yeah. I have a note here that says, can't you allow Jar Jar to do at least one thing right?
Well, we talked about this when we did Young Indiana Jones, and Remy Indiana Jones' sidekick Remy is like a kind of
Right.
Jar Jar character, but when he gets on the battlefield, he acts like a real soldier. Why didn't they do
Like
that?
a real hero, yeah.
And again, that would have made the next what happens with Jar Jar in the next movie even better. The sense that there's a little bit of badassness in there somewhere.
Yeah.
That he's the guy who might on a given day decide to plunge the galaxy into fascism. You know,
just maybe. Like, I'd be okay, because he's with Jar Jar, Lucas is always going for the cheap joke. And so I'm okay if he tries his weapon the first time and he's not great at it.
Wow, you're setting the bar
But
so low.
I am, but if there's at least a moment where when the shit goes down, Jar Jar focuses his goddamn energy and does something right.
Yeah.
You know, I could forgive a lot of Jar Jar. But because he rides that shit pony with floppy ears all the way into the fucking ground, you know, it's just hard to root for him.
And you know, they go so far down the road of slapstick that they end up doing a tribute to Buster Keaton.
Mm-hmm.
Like the bubble shields falling off the... I don't know, those are not the bubble shields, are they? That are chasing...
The blue balls, you mean?
Yeah. What are the blue balls? Are they the same?
I don't know. They're just the blue
They're
balls.
like bombs, aren't they? Blue ball bombs.
They're bombs. Yeah.
The blue ball bombs.
They're big and small blue ball bombs.
And they're chasing him down the hill, and it was a specific... And this was talked about, I think, probably on the same commentary you've listened to, that this was a callback to Seven Chances, the Buster Keaton stunt. And I say stunt because it was done entirely practically. Recreating it digitally does nothing for anyone.
Does not help it.
And the same can be
and also,
same can
you know,
be said
because...
of Anakin and what that he's doing everything accidentally. Like even more...
I don't like that.
No, I don't like that at all, and I don't understand it.
It doesn't make sense.
Because even within, you know, even within the movie, they're desperately trying to make you associate Anakin with the image that Obi-Wan created of him in Star Wars. So this scene is essential to that. He needs to be a good pilot, and he's never shown to be a good pilot. He's a lucky pilot at best.
But you'd think it would translate because he's a good pod racer.
Well, this is pod racing.
I guess
that's
for
what
me,
he says. That's not what I say.
What really bothers me about it is you have a chance to do something narratively that would be so interesting and so important for the character, because he's told to stay, and if he makes a choice to leave, not by accident, but says I want to help, and then ends up saving the day, maybe through a little bit of anger or something like that. Something that forces him to press an issue, and he does something that no pilot would have done.
They won't go there, though, will they? They won't go there.
Yeah, and so if he makes choices, and then Qui-Gon's dead, so he's not going to know, but Obi-Wan would know he made these choices and not know what to think about it. But now his friend has asked him, train him, please.
Yeah.
And he's forced to make, you could have made this movie so much more interesting.
Well, it could have been the first time he got away with doing something violent.
Yeah, exactly.
Where they're going, good job, Anakin, when you blew up all those people. And in his head, he could go, killing people makes me more popular.
Yeah, exactly. And you still have the political aspect of it, because the Jedi could be saying, I don't like what this fucking kid did, but meanwhile, he doesn't get a blue orb at the end of this movie. If
Was
Queen
that a
Amidala
medal?
is giving...
I hadn't even clocked that was a medal.
Yeah, that's their version of the medal. That's why this movie ends
Isn't that a bomb?
feeling like Star Wars.
Isn't that a bomb?
No, it's a different thing.
It's a different blue
thing.
ball. Okay, all right.
It's a different blue ball. This one has some red glowy shit in it.
You know what would have told me it was a medal? A medal.
But if she's giving him a prize as well, meaning politically the Jedi can't maybe punish him in the way that they want to, because he's seen as a hero, that's interesting. That could lead into something in the next film.
And then Palpatine would be like, oh, you got screwed there. Never trust the Jedi. Bye.
Yeah. there are so many good choices and so many good things you could have done with these last sequences, and he just kind of like Anakin, he just coasts into the final act of this movie, trying to make as few waves as possible, which to me is weird.
And now I'm even thinking of an alternative ending I'd like to see, where instead of Chewbacca turning up in Revenge of the Sith, he's in the edge of the final shot next to Anakin, and when Anakin doesn't get a medal, he looks at him and is like, "Hurts, don't it?"
Yeah, it really sucks, right? There are moments in this movie, Tom. One thing that really surprised me, and it was so funny to listen to in the commentary. I mean, it's going back in the movie. I think it's when they're still on Coruscant.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
And Jar Jar gives a little, whoopee, let's go back home, when they're deciding to go back to Naboo.
Yeah.
Weezer going home. And the camera in that moment is a little shaky, like it kind of falls right and then comes back.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah, you're right. It kind of flops. It flops with Jar Jar.
Yeah. I remember
that was
Lucas
the
saying,
famous exercise video of the time. Flop with Jar Jar.
Yeah, no, literally, they were saying Jar Jar was, the thing about Jar Jar was you had to move the camera a little bit and make it seem like it was a documentary so that he would look more believable. And I just remember thinking, some of these shots are just so... It lacks anything other than documentary feel.
Yeah.
That when you see that moment, you just think, that is really out of place and weird.
Yeah.
What are you doing
like
right
the C-3PO, cinema verite
point of
moment.
view, exactly.
Yeah, same thing.
Yeah.
It's jarring, like you say.
And so,
50% of this battle is won by slapstick.
Yeah, right. Yeah, totally.
So the stakes are already low, and they're even lower knowing that this battle is won entirely arbitrarily.
The rest of it is won by 2 hidden blasters.
Right, two hidden. I tell you what I do like, and you will probably not be surprised to learn why.
Go ahead.
The Ascension guns.
I do like that.
And you know why I like that.
Why?
GoldenEye.
Oh, well, all right, yeah. Fine.
That's how GoldenEye starts, when he's...
Yeah. I know how GoldenEye starts.
So we start with Connery Bond and
you pander to me, asshole.
They start the movie with Thunderball, we end it with GoldenEye.
Yeah.
We go from Connery to Brosnan.
They were moving at a pace. I think you talked about how, kind of rushed this movie ended up having to be made.
Yeah.
And they go at a pace, if you notice, that when they first used those grappling guns, there's a guy second from the left who just kind of gets held behind everybody else as they're shooting.
Good enough. Let's move on.
And yeah, Lucas is like, so what we had to do was in the next scene when we had to seem like he was going fast at the in the next shot to catch up with them, because we weren't able to make it work and we had to move on, but we had to account for it.
I'm amazed that it didn't cross his mind to do what he did with other shots in this movie, where he just literally photoshopped people out and put different shots from different takes in.
Yeah.
Because they did that in... they put Captain Panaka... They put a different take of Captain Panaka in a cockpit scene. With the actors in it, because they liked what one of them were doing.
From another scene?
But not what the others were doing. So why didn't he just scrub that guy out?
I don't know.
And replace it with like a farting bantha or something.
They all go up and a piece of shit falls down.
Let's talk Duel of the Fates.
Yeah,
because it begins with the full reveal of Darth Maul's design. We find out he has horns, and a double lightsaber, because he's only using half of it the first time we see him.
Right.
And it's just like,
and so that's new.
Yeah, and it's kind of quite striking.
But we know that going in, because there's the shot in the preview of him. This moment.
Yeah, if you've seen the and they didn't, but it was an era where they didn't care about those kinds of spoilers. Right. I just mean in the context of the movie.
Yeah,
because your mind especially if you're not seeing what you expected to see, you would have forgotten that this was in the trailer, and you could still be conceivably surprised, like, oh,
Surprised.
it's a double lightsaber. And
Can I ask you something?
sure, I don't want you to, but go ahead.
I think I spoke to this in the last. I think I spoke to this in the last episode, but I can't remember if I did. Because did we talk about his dying at the end of this fight? Because to me, this is another tragic mistake.
Is it?
Well, I think it is. In my mind, I thought, listen, we spent the first 3 movies hating Darth Vader, and then Jedi pulls off
you
this
mean Darth
miraculous...
Maul? Absolutely. Yeah, I thought you were talking
Darth
about
Maul.
Qui-Gon, and I was trying to figure out what.
No, not Qui-Gon. Sorry.
Good. Okay. Yes, I absolutely agree. Why couldn't he? Well,
Yeah, like
or
let's
start
build
with
another
Christopher.
character
Or
that
start
we...
with Christopher Lee. Or
Yeah, right.
have him in all 3 movies, or work on this guy.
Because Darth Maul doesn't get a lot to do in this movie, and I really would have liked to have hated him and seen what he did over the course of 3 movies.
But that's the curse of Star Wars, because then
you have to write a backstory for him, and then we see 3 prequels that involve...
well, more or less,
how
yeah.
he became
I mean, he
Darth
comes
Maul.
back in Clone Wars
Yeah.
because he doesn't die. Spoiler alert.
Right.
He doesn't die, he just gets robot legs, and then, he and then Darth Vader end up dueling in various comics and TV shows later on, and he turns up in Solo. He's now like a Jabba-like gangster. So it's like, you think you want to see it, but when you actually see it, you realize, no, that was good. I was good with him dying when he did. What do you think of the fight?
Overall, I think it's a fantastic fight.
I mean,
think
it's
the
very
movie...
practical. They're all doing what they're supposed to be doing.
They're all
There's
doing
no
that
digital trickery there.
And Ray Park and Ewan McGregor, apparently, they were going at it so hard, they were bending their actual saber hilts in half.
Yeah.
That's how hard they were working. And you can see it all on screen, and it does look great. I think the movie labors to try and separate the characters. I don't.
And it's also it's different because it's straight up martial arts, which is something the movie's only flirted with before, right? The occasional ninja flip from Luke is as far as we've gone, and this is full on.
But it always feels more grounded than the shit they're doing in this movie.
Well, not
because
in this
they were
sequence.
more limited. I think I talked about that.
In this sequence, it feels more grounded than it ever has because.
Then then in the other movies,
because they're viscerally doing everything at the highest speed and quality we've ever seen from a piece of action in this series, and it's in silence, which is good. Well, not silence, but just using music.
Right.
Which too much choir on that, but I'll let it pass.
Okay.
But Williams didn't. That was another Lucas choice.
Oh,
yeah,
was it?
Originally Williams scored it as it started with a little bit of choir and then faded out, and Lucas was like, "No, keep it going through the entire song." So I'm not going to blame Williams for that. It's a great piece of music.
Yeah,
and that one of the choices that Lucas made that I admire is that he heard this bit of music and said, "Oh, I want this to be the recurring theme of the trilogy. I want this to come back in every movie at a certain point thematically." And I think that when you see at the end of Revenge of the Sith, you go, "Oh, okay, that's what it meant. That's what that piece of music meant," which is what Lucas was going for. Because there's a little bit of choir in the Return of the Jedi soundtrack.
Yeah,
that kind of well, that's a foghorn, but you know what I mean. That's it. You know the
Yeah. I was about to attempt it, and then I stopped because I thought I'd sound stupid.
Because you heard me do it, and you were like, "Whoa, definitely not trying that now." Oh.
But it's funny because, I mean, I spoke before about how much I like the pod race, and the pod race and this fight, along with a couple of technical things, is why this movie tops my list. the pod race and this fight are that
Yeah,
good.
they are.
And then in addition, I think the one thing this movie has over other movies, and this is a purely aesthetic thing that I just like more, it's shot on film and it makes a difference for me. I think it looks better. And then they are actually using more locations, and that matters to me as well. And so
yeah, it's about what you value, and that's all reasonable.
That it gives a general appeal that makes me like the movie the most. But this fight goes a long way towards, me loving this movie.
And
not loving this movie, but liking this movie more than.
And it's others. Not, it pays.
Loving that scene.
It pays off emotionally too, because we're so viscerally engaged with what's going on that when Qui-Gon gets laser sworded. It's really funny whenever Lucas talks about Star Wars mythology, he uses the wrong words, I think on purpose. I think he's trolling everyone. He keeps calling them laser
just
swords.
Just to bother people? You're back.
Suddenly the movie has stakes and emotion, and it seems like all the characters are so hepped up from this fight that they're starting to act.
Yeah, exactly.
Obi-Wan's reaction to Qui-Gon dying is again, it's like the most acting done in the entire movie.
Right.
And it's out of character for him because he's been sort of shown to be a sort of Boy Scout up to this point.
Yeah. Right.
I think it all works, and I like the sort of, I don't know how deliberate this was, but the whole meditation and preparing for death, which I don't know if they're trying to call back and forward to Obi-Wan,
to Star Wars,
Obi-Wan and what he did.
Yeah.
I feel like if they meant to, they would have made it more specific, but they eventually decide that that's him preparing to become a Force ghost. But in this moment, I think it just works in the way that it changes the pace of the fight.
Yeah, absolutely.
And again, just like really great silent movie making.
I mean, within the scope of just this scene, it just seems as though he's recentering himself.
Yeah. And taunting Darth Maul, I think, a little bit as well.
Yeah. But I do lament not getting to know Darth Maul more.
Especially before he had robo legs.
In this movie. No, especially before that. But I haven't actually, I've heard about that, of course, but I haven't seen any of that.
There's a great story they tell on Star Wars Minute about one of the guests said they went to a screening of Solo, and then they have the Darth Maul cameo at the end, and the credits roll, the lights go up, and then two people in the audience going, I thought he was dead. Didn't we see him die in The Phantom Menace? And then there's one of the guys is like cleaning up, and he's like, no, so he came back in Clone Wars, and he had robot legs. It's just like, that's the definition of having to explain something in a film, if you need one of the guys who works there to explain it to you afterwards. There was not enough narrative information there.
That's great.
It seems like a missed opportunity to have that Obi-Wan didn't inherit Qui-Gon's green lightsaber.
Yeah, I thought the same thing.
Like, why do we go from green to blue and back to green again?
Yeah, his is gone.
Yeah. Although I'm sure we'll say plenty about the colors of lightsabers when we get to the next film.
Oh boy, will we? No choice.
And I do think it's really the final kicker for Obi-Wan that his master calls him over to say his last words and make sure you train that kid I just met. It's like, what about me?
Yeah.
What about me? I've been your Padawan for years.
Been your loyal partner, probably for 37 years, because apparently that's how Jedi work now. I don't know.
Timeline doesn't bear thinking about. Maybe that's when Obi-Wan decided he was going to try and kill Anakin.
The other funny thing about Jedi that I like, a little side story that I think is hilarious, is way back in 1977, Mark Hamill had apparently said to George Lucas, well, what if I grew my hair out a little longer and did like a little ponytail and tried to make myself look more, samurai-like. He's like, fuck you, you're not doing that. That's stupid. And then apparently Mark Hamill saw this movie and cut to this movie. He's like, that fucking asshole. He took all my ideas.
You should have seen what hairstyle they were originally going to give Anakin, and Obi-Wan for that matter. Jesus, we got off lightly both times.
Okay.
Again, we have it's a legal definition of Obi-Wan thinking he could train Anakin. But that's not what the original movie was getting at.
No, not at all. This is like the biggest thing that bothers me the most about this movie.
I thought I could
He's
train
supposed
Anakin.
to-
It's like, no, you were emotionally blackmailed into doing it.
Yeah, exactly.
By
I don't understand this choice. And not only that, I don't understand the Jedi deciding it's okay to train him. It should be in defiance. It should be him
well, they
separating
feel bad.
himself.
They sort of sent Qui-Gon to his death. That's how I always read it.
The Jedi are cold motherfuckers. They don't care. Why would they care now?
Because
There's no evidence that the Jedi should care about that.
they're starting to realize that, one more rogue Jedi and you end up with a Count Dooku.
But they don't even know about Count Dooku yet.
And who is Cypher Dyas? No idea.
Don't know.
Still don't know.
I looked that one up, I recall. As I was watching the movie, I thought, "Who the fuck is this?" And I was like, "Okay, well, I don't know any of that."
Yeah.
When the information came
It's
up,
like,
I was
well,
like, that's not in anything.
none of these other words are making any sense.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, I really wanted Obi-Wan to make a choice. There are no choices for the characters in this movie.
No, he has no choice.
What an interesting choice it would be if he decided on his own that he was going to do this.
Yeah.
And it was in defiance of the Jedi.
It also makes it,
And the moment he becomes a Jedi, he does this thing. And then where that could lead us in the second film. But, for a man with so much imagination, George Lucas didn't want to take that far of a leap with his characters.
Sort of happens by accident.
He had no imagination for... Yeah, I mean, it just... And it grains against direct dialogue from that first movie, which just grains against me.
You've got to believe that Obi-Wan's telling the truth, which, based on based on his behavior historically, might not be the case.
Right.
Ian McDiarmid then steals the film with one line: "We'll follow your career with great interest." It's also, I think, it's like the prequelness of this movie generally doesn't work. Like, there's too much dramatic irony. People's dialogue is devoted to mentioning something that will happen.
Is plainly obvious.
That will happen in the next. Well, that too. But will happen in Star Wars, but they don't know it's going to happen, but we do. That's the thing. And this is one of those examples, but it's sort of subtle and smooth enough and quick.
Right.
It's just like, you just go, "Oh yeah, that's right. He's the Emperor, that's Darth Vader." But you don't have to think about it for too long, and it doesn't spoil anything.
Meanwhile, they're all just watching a body burn, by the way.
Yeah, we burn Qui-Gon. Yeah. I also like that there's a shot of Palpatine arriving as Newt Gunray's taken away. So it's like the bad guys get taken away while the real bad guy gets away with it. And then he's made Chancellor. He ascends to a position of power that he never leaves. And this is one of two significant events that happen in the entire film.
Yeah.
Him becoming Chancellor,
and it happens in the last 2 minutes.
And this is my bombshell.
Okay, go ahead.
The best way...
I'm not going to talk for an hour.
The best way to follow the prequel trilogy is through Palpatine thinking of him as the hero. Because he achieves all his goals.
He does, yes. You're right.
He is the hero of this film.
Yeah.
Technically.
That's great. What if Lucas had shifted focus to that idea?
Like Joker or Cruella, but with Palpatine.
Kind of, yeah. Right.
You know how I would
Exactly.
like it. I'm surprised it hasn't been done already.
Yeah.
Timothy Chalamet as young Palpatine. Young Palpatine, that's pretty good.
That is pretty good.
Or just Sheev.
Yeah.
The Sheev Show.
Oh my.
Yeah, they burn Qui-Gon. Obvious visual crossover with Vader's funeral. Without the toxic fumes, of course.
Yeah. Less plastic.
And then we get another retcon of the Vader-Emperor relationship. It gets even less special than it turned out to be when Yoda says, "The Sith always two there are." And I'm like,
Yeah.
So, really, it's about making up the numbers. It's not got anything to do with...
Right.
The Emperor doesn't really want Darth Vader, and Darth Vader doesn't really want to be with the Emperor.
It just has to
It
be
has
two.
to be two, and they have to be constantly trying to kill the other one.
I tell you, it's not a good idea for a Sith program.
Yeah. And given that it's like part of their mythology, I'm surprised it takes Christopher Lee by such surprise. But anyway.
Right. Yes. He seems like he should be sage and wise
really
enough
does.
to figure this
Especially
out
as he's
beforehand.
90 years old by that point.
Yeah.
Oggy's Municipal Band lead the celebration.
Bop, bop, bop.
It's like Scott. Kind of that, yeah. I can do it if you want. I don't want to put it in your head for the rest of the week. Da 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 da. It's the.
You know, when you did that right now, it sounded very much like Mortal Kombat.
They're very similar.
Phantom Menace.
Now that would have improved this movie. We get the color coded Gungans. Apparently, there's more colors of Gungans than we've seen before.
And you get the orb medals.
The orb medals, which I didn't know until you said it.
Or orb
I
medal.
thought it was just like, the gold telephone in Godfather 2.
Because it's only one, and it goes to the boss.
Because they don't even look happy about receiving it. It looks like the gold telephone.
Well, he does.
Gold telephone, and
he's like,
Boss
he's
Nass
lifting
is
it up,
a
and
lunatic.
Boss Nass is loving it.
Brian Blessed, he's a lunatic. But it's like the gold telephone in Godfather 2. They're just so like politely passing it around.
Well, and I always, I kind of Mandela affected the end of this movie for myself, because this is just a direct pull for Star Wars for me. This is the medal moment, except no medals, one orb. But I really thought I thought Jar Jar got an orb. I thought for sure that Anakin got an orb. And it's just one big orb for Boss Nass, and that's it. Done.
Yeah. It's the beginning of Gungan integration into Nabooian society.
Yeah, into Naboo life.
There's Queen Amidala's too sexual smile at Anakin.
Yes.
And then something which I genuinely think they were trying to establish at this point and taught themselves out of in the next two movies, which is that there's going to be a love triangle of Padme, Anakin, and Obi-Wan because of how they're all standing in relation to each other. And because there's dialogue in the third movie the third movie that only makes sense if they've been part of a love triangle.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, it's the classic one shot, isn't it? But every time I see it, I have the same thought. It just makes me think how low stakes this was compared to previous endings.
The original.
Because you've got Star Wars, you've got the Death Star's blown up. Empire Strikes Back, you've got, we survived. And then Return of the Jedi, the Death Star's blown up. Now, this is like, we resolved a trade dispute.
We resolved a trade dispute,
one planet.
But there's one thing I am going to give to this movie, actually to this entire portion of the trilogy, because between the first trilogy and then the last trilogy, the one thing Lucas does that's I think is really smart, there's no giant thing you have to blow up. He tries to get away from that. And that's something he fucked up.
I like it.
That's something he fucked up himself, in the first trilogy, where he just brings back the Death Star. And so all the bad tendency of that last trilogy, you could blame Lucas for because he did it himself, but he really tries to get away from it in this trilogy, and I respect that.
Too much getting away from it. No, you're absolutely right. That's, as you're saying, that sounds like something that I should have said as someone who likes these movies. I think you're absolutely right. I think that's you can see it as a purposeful inversion that is of merit.
Mm-hmm.
But again, that hinders it.
Well, like everything else,
that hinders it from launching a trilogy. You know, it doesn't effectively launch the trilogy. It should be a standalone movie for that very reason.
Well, and I think it applies to the whole front trilogy in effect, because...
Not really. I mean, a bunch of shit happened. I mean, there's higher stakes in the next two movies, for sure.
No, yeah, you're right about that. I just meant specifically about getting away, like trying this different thing and doing the inversion. I lost my train of thought. I don't even know what I'm talking about anymore.
You're right. You don't talk yourself out of it. I think it's the most.
I had a point to make, and I forgot.
You made it. I think it's the most brilliant thing that's been said over these many hours. I'm serious. I'm not even joking.
I got it in under the wire.
I'm not even joking. I never thought about it in that light, but it's totally purposeful. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. You'd like one big orb of death destroyed.
Yeah, it was one of the blue bombs that was taken there by mistake, and the only one that survived. And that's how Anakin became Darth Vader. He was always a little crisp thing in a robot, so he'd be like the Stewie Darth Vader.
Mm-hmm. Well, credit check.
Yeah.
Big one?
I don't know if it's that big. Certainly not compared to how long the rest of it's taken.
I have one credit check note, but I'll save it till sort of the end because it comes last. Okay. In the actual credits.
I'll let you round us out then. Written and directed by George Lucas. I mean,
wow. That says it all, doesn't it?
That's probably the least surprising credit in the entirety of cinema. Once again, we said this about the original trilogy. The billing is absurd.
Mm-hmm.
Ahmed Best, Anthony Daniels, and Kenny Baker, nominally sidekicks, but are the stars of this movie.
Right.
And then Terrence Stamp gets name recognition over Ian McDermott. So it just must have been contractual.
That's crazy.
It must have been
right. Which
is interesting because, Terrence Stamp was in Superman 2 and all the sort of billing shenanigans there.
Mm-hmm.
Once you get to the end of the cast list, it's just voices. And it struck me that this is the point at which more and more actors, and probably to this day, are appearing in Star Wars movies as voices only. I mean, one of the most famous Star Wars characters is just a voice. Pedro Pascal as the Mandalorian. He's not there.
Right.
Well,
James Earl Jones. I mean, this whole thing's about becoming Darth Vader, so...
Thanks to all the UK construction crew, this is back in the days where we'd rather shorten the credits than thank everyone.
Yeah, right.
Visual effects crew fueled by Michael Smith of Jabba the Hutt, which was originally a Simpsons joke that then turned into reality. Someone actually...
Oh, what Simpson? When?
They had
Is there a Jabba the Hutt?
There's a Jabba the Hutt, in a Simpsons episode, so someone made it a reality. Special thanks to the people of Tatooine.
Good.
Which I assume is Tatooine.
Oh, yes. Because
this is in the part where they talk about Tunisia. Mm-hmm. So basically they were like, what should we call it? What was the place we filmed in called? Tatooine. Fine. Good enough.
Yeah. Oh, I remember seeing that credit. Yes.
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about now. Yeah. Because I remember I paused it and I started looking up shit on the internet. I was like, wait, what are these places actually called? What's going on? What's happening?
Is your credit check about the breathing?
No.
Okay. So we get the Vader theme.
Yeah.
And the Darth Vader breathing.
Mm-hmm.
And this was this spoke to some of the marketing around this movie, which I haven't brought up yet, but I remember
I haven't brought something up about the marketing of this movie that I wanted to bring up either.
I remember a cardboard cutout poster that was in all the movie theaters I went to, which was Jake Lloyd.
Yeah, standing on the sand with the
and then the
shadow
silhouette
of Vader.
Darth Vader around.
That's
him.
what I wanted
and
to
I
talk
feel
about.
like, and I feel like this is the audio equivalent of that.
Because I always felt like that poster is the only reason George Lucas wanted to cast someone so young. For that poster.
Well, it's the height difference that really makes it.
Because if it's a really little kid, then the shadow being that big would really be something, right? Because it would really be a terrible, terrible tragedy.
That's like poetry; it rhymes. So, and just to end on another George Lucas quote, I can't recommend the making of Phantom Menace documentary enough, and it's all official. It's all made by Lucasfilm. So, but it doesn't seem like they left anything out. And he goes to a screening of the rough cut, and he sits in the theater, and as the lights go down, he said, "I think I may have gone too far this time." Honestly,
that is fantastic.
And you feel
because
the sense in the room,
I wouldn't think he'd even have enough sense to say that.
I think in context he might have been talking about pacing,
right?
Because the conversation afterwards makes me think, he's not talking about the things that we think he's talking about. I think he's talking about like the movie goes too fast, which is not something that in its final released version anyone ever said.
Yeah. Should I tell you mine now?
Oh, go ahead.
Well, one of the last credit things I noticed as the movie was ending, it said, if you experienced any condition that detracted from the theatrical presentation of this film, call, and it gave a number. And I wondered how many calls they got that said, this movie fucking sucks.
Yeah. Yeah.
If they just opened themselves up. Of course, he was talking about technical shit. But I wonder how many people called and complained on that number.
You're absolutely right. I mean, that phone line was famous for harboring calls about the quality of the movies, not the quality of the presentation.
Yeah.
And it was, I think it's been suspected that THX did that as a way of reducing the amount of people complaining about theatrical presentation. So,
that's great. I like it. I like it a lot. Well, anything left?
No, that's everything.
All right.
Right down to the last breath of the movie.
God damn it, we did it.
We did.
Look at us.
We've nothing to be proud of, but we did it.
I'm a pile of sweat at the end of this one.
Absolutely.
And I don't think it's all just heat related.
Big pile of Java juice.
Yeah. All right. This was a good talk.
It was more than a talk. I mean... it was...
Yeah. It was a couple of really...
It was a transcript.
It was a couple of big-ass Senate speeches.
Yeah, absolutely. What are you proposing? Sorry, I shouldn't have done that.
No, your instincts were correct.
The other day, not to take us down a tangent, the other day I've been doing Simpsons impressions for my son.
Oh,
recently,
nice.
Because he's been watching The Simpsons, and I throw out my Krusty and I throw out my comic book store guy. And
right.
He was like, "Can you do the guy who runs the shop?" And I start doing comic book store guy, and he's like, "No, the guy who runs the Quickie Mart." And I was like, can't do that anymore. And he's like, why? And I was like, I just can't.
It would be hard for you to understand.
Yeah. It's like, but I can watch it? Yes.
Yeah. It's funny you say that because I was listening to some podcast the other day, and Bill Hader was talking about a bunch of movies he loved as, a kid, and I think one of them, he was talking about watching the movies he loved with his kids, his 3 girls, and they watch Goonies, and the girls would say something like, "Why don't the fucking girls do anything in this movie?" And he's like, "No, she plays the piano and helps them save." She goes, "That's bullshit." You know.
She's right. She's 100% right.
And he said, so eventually he had to just start telling his 3 daughters, "Look, these movies were made for me."
Yeah.
For me, specifically. Like, just me. Just a male boy my age.
Well, if I ever show my son James Bond, he will just be, like, after every scene, I'll go, "Now, don't ever do that."
Yeah, exactly.
You don't ever treat a woman that way, okay?
Not ever, ever, ever.
But again, he'd be like, but I can watch it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Just be aware.
Yeah.
All right, well, ladies and gentlemen, that's part 1 of what are going to be some lengthy talks about these Star Wars prequels. Boy, do they deserve it.
Thank you for coming to our TED Talk.
Yeah, Phantom of the Menace in the books.
Phantom of the Menace?
Huh? Did I say that?
Phantom of the Menace? Yeah. You know, I kind of preferred even that title.
Phantom of the Menace.
Better description of what happens in the movie.
No, you might be right.
We get the Phantom of Menace, but not actual Menace.
Right. Sorry. The Phantom Menace is in the books. Coming up next, Attack of the Clones. You're going to have to tell us what you think about Phantom of...
The opera?
Again. Yeah, Phantom of... Phantom. God damn it.
If you can't say it twice in succession, that means it's a bad title. I think that's the rule.
If you want to tell us what you think of the Phantom Menace, find us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. Send an email. Send us that email to everythingsequel at gmail.com. For Tom Stewart of Lonesome Whistle Productions, Michael Shantz here, giggling. I'm from the How Dare You Awards. Like I said, up next, Attack of the Clones. Say goodbye to everybody, Tom.
Maxie beat the Force. That smells stinky with.
Yeah, I'm going to challenge you. Are you going to go Jar Jar in the next movie? Because you're going to have to start searching far and wide for lines. You're going to get at least one in, I bet.
I could do... Also, this line, Jar Jar may well be being ironic. It's impossible to tell.
Oh, we could never know. All right, everyone, that's it.
Maxie Big.